Ole Miss finally won the game they've spent the better part of the last 60 years losing, and now we can start really talking playoffs and getting ready for the run that we all hoped would happen. This is the ecstatic Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. We're going to talk about Ole Miss winning the game that they've spent the better part of the last 60 years losing. We're going to talk about Kewan Lacy and his SEC Player of the Week worthy performance, and the playoffs, they're all but assured. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and let's have some fun tonight. We're going to reminisce. We're going to have a good time, and everybody else can just eat it. It's just the way it is, because nobody wants Ole Miss to be good, and now they're all going to be butthurt about it. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen, and please give us a like, subscribe, and comment on your way out. Check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college and pro, is available. Now, man, I'm not joking. I'm not joking. We had somebody, one of the Locked On hosts, I'm not going to put him on blast. I'm not going to put any Locked On host on blast. So if you're coming here for that, you're not going to get it, because I was accused of calling this clickbait, saying the Florida game was the biggest game in Ole Miss history. Now, another Ole Miss fan that happens in Locked On had my back on that, but this was the biggest game in Ole Miss history. This was the must-win game that Ole Miss has had 5 or 6 times in their history to accomplish a goal. It doesn't matter who they're playing. It could have been the Citadel. It could have been Mississippi State. It could have been Louisiana Tech. That is irrelevant. Whoever Ole Miss matched up against in games like this, they found a way to lose that game. The Hunter heave against Arkansas in 2015, when they should have been assured of the playoffs. Eli falling down in 2003. Losing the game against Tennessee in 1990. Losing the game against Tennessee in 1986. Whenever Ole Miss has been in a position like this, they have not won the game. So when Ole Miss gets into positions like this, at least for the fan base, at least for me, somebody whose first game was Steve Sloan's last at Ole Miss, an Egg Bowl game that Ole Miss lost in Mississippi Veterans Memorial Stadium in 1982. For that group of fans, this game meant something. And it doesn't matter that it was a 3-6 Florida team who played very well, by the way. I was impressed by DJ Lagway. I was impressed by some of the explosives. I was impressed by some of the schemes they were running and how they were doing defensively and all that. Florida played their hearts out, and props to them. Good game, Gators. Seriously. You actually really played a good game. And Ole Miss fans, for the better part of 2.5 quarters, going into the fourth quarter, you were saying, here we go again. We're going to lose this game again. Against all odds, we are going to lose this game. The difference in this team is 2 players. And there was more talent on last year's team. Anybody that argues otherwise would be lying to you. But this is a better football team because of 2 players. Trinidad Chambliss, who threw a horrible interception that allowed the game to be a lot closer than it needed to be. But I can excuse that because he rebounded. And Kewan Lacy, who had his SEC Player of the Week star turn, who had the ability to be a star, who had exactly what was needed to get Ole Miss over the hump finally, to finally win that game. It was an amazing night. And I talked about all week how everybody worrying about Lane and all of that stuff, all of the noise that was coming out of Florida, which I thought was a psyop because it was only Florida people talking about it. But with all that going on, it was going to diminish this. It's not the case. What you have is an Ole Miss team that is likely going to be somewhere either 5th or 6th in the next round of the college football playoff, maybe 5th, because Oklahoma beat Alabama. Oklahoma is going to come up to like 7th or so in the college football playoff poll, which is going to push Ole Miss further because now that has become the second best win in the conference behind Georgia beating Ole Miss. Texas is out. Alabama is on the precipice of being just absolutely weird. I don't know how I feel about that, having to go to Jordan-Hare and have to deal with Auburn with the playoffs on the line, them having 2 losses and one of them being to Florida State. That is the scenario you wanted to avoid going down to Starkville, absolutely having to win by not winning against the Florida Gators. And they came out really quick. They did. They came out and made plays. They came out and jumped out early to a 10-0 lead. And Florida schemed up a very good drive using quarterback runs and DJ Lagway, and they ran down the field and scored a touchdown. That was a schemed drive. I do not blame Pete Golding for that at all. Then on the first play of the next drive, Trinidad Chambliss throws an interception. It's returned to the 3-yard line. Florida scores another touchdown. Now, in 2 minutes later, it's 14-10. It's not because Florida was good. It was because Ole Miss helped them. And if you watched my show over the course of the week, which I all assumed you do, I said the only way that Florida can win this game is if Ole Miss helps them. And Ole Miss helped them multiple times in the second quarter of this game. There was the interception. There was the illegal man downfield that took a touchdown off the board. There was 10 points, 11 points that was shifted that could have made this game an absolute blowout. Because if you look at the stats, it kind of was. Other than 2 explosive plays, it was a blowout. They didn't deserve to win the game, but it was close. And I will give them credit for it being close. But statistically, everything that was going on, Ole Miss dominated that game. But Ole Miss fans were on the edge of their seat because of the 60 years of post-traumatic stress that we were trying to deal with, that we got over the hump tonight with, that we turned that last corner tonight. And I'm going to take the night off on all the Lane Kiffin stuff. We'll talk about that, start talking about it again Monday. I do not think he's going to announce anything on Sunday like all the Florida people are saying. I just don't. But we'll see how that goes. Maybe something gets announced and we'll talk about it on Monday's show. I promise. This show is about the team. This show is going to be about the Ole Miss Rebel football players that were finally able to get Ole Miss over the hump, to get Ole Miss to the point where we wanted Ole Miss to be for our entire lives if we're under the age of 65. This is a momentous night. This is a historic night if you're an Ole Miss fan. If you're an Alabama fan, if you're an LSU fan, heck, if you're a Florida fan watching this, you don't understand what I'm talking about. And that's fine because you don't have the scar tissue that we have. You didn't have to go through all of the stuff that we have been through in hopes that we would hit the promised land. That happened tonight. That is why this game is momentous. Doesn't matter who Ole Miss played. Ole Miss took care of business tonight. It felt a lot closer than it was, and we will talk a lot about the box score and everything in just a second when we come back. But first, we're going to go over the box score. We're going to look at the individual stars of the game. And in segment 3, we're going to take your comments. So please put where you're commenting from so I can call that out. We are going to have fun. We are going to make this community be the best thing it can be and why it was here. And it should be a lot of fun. So anyway, stick around for that. All right, Ole Miss just defeated the Florida Gators, so it's time to crown a weekend MVP from DoorDash. DoorDash is Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Ole Miss, Kewan Lacy, 233 yards and 3 touchdowns. And this is a guy that has been breaking longer and longer runs. He was kind of going. He's a young guy. And against the Florida Gators, he was just a tough man to deal with. He had 100 yards in the first quarter and a half or something like that. And it was amazing. And if you followed him, he's definitely on a streak. And just like Kewan Lacy delivered for Ole Miss, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save money every Saturday you order. You stack it all up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period runs through November 18th. Hey, do us a favor. Like, subscribe, and comment to this video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcast you're listening to and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but it helps keep all of this free. Locked On is also getting ready to change the game yet again, all in the name of having fun following your team. It's coming in December. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We are definitely appreciative of that. Now, some interesting stuff. Let's do a little box score cleanup real quick with what's going on. We'll start off with the individuals. Actually, I forgot to bring the box score in, so it's going to take a little bit of time because I'm a little bit excited. So please bear with me. We're going to bring it up in just a second. But Ole Miss got the 34-24 win over the Florida Gators, and it was a well-deserved win if we're going to be honest about it. Look at the stat difference of this game. Anybody that's going to tell you that Florida should have won the game, no, look at the stat difference on this right here. Ole Miss did some dumb stuff on 4th down. Big game Lane, he appeared again. Ole Miss was just too good to be punished by it, essentially. But Ole Miss had won 34-24. They had 27 first downs, 237 yards rushing, 301 yards passing for a total of 538 yards and a touchdown. Ole Miss held Florida to 14 first downs in the game in the second half. Man, they just completely destroyed them, if we're going to be completely honest. Florida had 108 yards rushing, 218 yards passing. A couple of explosive passes led to that. Ole Miss did in the second quarter have the problem of giving up explosives, but DJ Lagway, he was pretty good in the second quarter, if we're going to be honest. Florida had 326 yards of total offense, and then there was that big interception that kind of shut the door and kind of stopped the rivalry with whatever. Great play by Suntarine Perkins. It was fantastic. And props to Prince Will Amon-Mielen for getting a sack. I know that meant a good deal to him. Now, Trinidad Chambliss, he was 26 of 35 for 301 yards. He threw that one interception, but he did have a touchdown pass in the long pass to Deshaun Stribling. Kewan Lacy, 31 carries, 224 yards, averaged 7.2 yards per carry. Long of 59, had 3 touchdowns as well. And then if you look at it, Ole Miss had 9 receivers catch passes. We talked all week about Trinidad Chambliss being able to distribute the ball around, and he was able to do that. Deshaun Stribling caught the long touchdown from about 43 yards out. Harrison Wallace was really good. Caden Lee, Daquan Wright, Winston Watkins. It's basically the usual suspects had a pretty big day receiving the ball. And Wyatt Williams led the team in tackles as well. And sacks-wise, there was only one. It was just Prince Will Amon-Mielen. And Ole Miss only had 3 tackles for loss in the game. That was a problem, but with Jaden Ball and DJ Lagway and the problem bringing them down and stuff, it was going to be an issue as well. All right. We are going to have a good time. We are going to take your questions for a good bit of the time. We're going to talk about the game, anything that y'all have, any thoughts that y'all have to bring up, please say them. But we're going to spend the next 15 or 20 minutes talking directly to you. So stick around. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. All right, the NFL is back, or the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. So right now, FanDuel is giving customers $300 in bonus bets when that first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, so let's get into the comment section and have a good time and kind of do what this website is supposed to do real quick. I'm excited. I want to thank producer Becky that's going through picking out the comments that are going to air. So if y'all don't get aired, blame her, right? Right. Confirmed 68,138 in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium tonight. That's a stadium record. That is because people knew exactly what was going on in this game and how big it was. That's awesome. That's from Matthew Mitchell. Thank you very much for that stat. And Bobby Patrick from Alexander, Virginia. I lost a few years off of my life, but it was worth it to see 10-1. Although we played antsy, as soon as we intercepted the ball, I knew we were going to win. Me too, honestly. And once you got down there, I do think that Lane should have kicked the field goal there, if we're going to be honest, because the difference between 3 points and a touchdown, it was pretty big, if we're going to be honest about that. But it worked out in the end. I think Big Game Wayne made an appearance in this game. And I talked all week about this. You don't go for it. You kick field goals. 3 points is good enough to win. And they almost did that. Ahmad Hardy had 300 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns tonight for Missouri against Mississippi State. 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Good gosh. Canoe to you. I hope Chambliss gets another year. I think we all do. PJ Thornton says, let's go, baby. And the Who Dat Weekly says, hell yeah, damn right. And you are absolutely correct. It's one of those things, I'm telling you, unless you're an Ole Miss fan and you have this scar tissue, you don't understand why we're excited tonight. You don't. People, it'd be like the Cleveland Browns winning the Super Bowl, or like when the Saints won the Super Bowl in 2009. That's what it was. There's people that feel like they earned this, and that was pretty cool. Sean Lee says, distance doesn't matter. Proud of this team all the way from Malaysia. All right, the hotty toddy, Sean. Amazing win, hotty toddy. Tyler Leslie, this team this year is the best in my lifetime. We can win a national title. Yeah. 1 4th and 2 stop. 1 4th and 2 stop away from being 11-0. That's it. 1 4th and 2 stop. That is the difference between you being second in the country and you being, I guess, 5th or 6th, wherever they end up. So, yeah, you're absolutely correct. Ole Miss can absolutely win a national championship. William Bowles, do you think Ole Miss will beat Mississippi State? Yes, I do think Ole Miss will beat Mississippi State. Mississippi State has trouble stopping the run. They do. And the way that Mississippi State has clogged up the Ole Miss game over the last couple of years, even though Ole Miss won them, is basically by playing cloud coverage and doing the Engage 8 blitzing and all that. This year is a little bit different with Kewan Lacy. Ahmad Hardy ran for 300 yards against Mississippi State tonight. That's crazy. Connor B says, this is the most stressful game in forever. Yeah, because of what it meant. It was so massive. It was so huge. And Ole Miss always loses this game. Always. It doesn't matter who you're playing. Ole Miss finds a way to drop this game. In 2008, after Ole Miss goes down to the swamp and it looks like they turned the corner and were getting ready to go, they immediately came back home and lost to South Carolina. that's where the scar tissue comes from. Cash the Real Saint says, but with all things said about Lane, good teams figure out ways to win. Absolutely. UNC Bat says that grin and smile on your face, Steven, hotty toddy brother. Yeah, this feels like it was a long time coming, man. It really does. It feels like it was a long time coming. And thank you. All Ole Miss fans need to be enjoying tonight. And I'm glad that we have a bye week. I'm glad that happened. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Trey Blackman from Shelby, North Carolina. I'm glad it's over because it was exhausting. Yes, that second quarter was pretty terrible, if we're going to be honest about it. It was awful. There was explosives and all of that, the turnovers. You were like, oh my gosh, we're helping them. We're doing the one thing we can't do. And then Ole Miss was able to go to halftime, sure up everything, and get ready to go in the second half, and they completely shut down Ford in the second half. Mike Biggs, can we please abandon the quarterback draw up the middle in the red zone since it has never worked and it always wasted down? Can we please stop the two quarterback thing on third down? Everybody's like, hey, Trinidad threw a bad pass on fourth down. That was a good pass. It was a good play. He was going to score a touchdown. He just made a mistake on the throw. It was the third down pass when you tried to run the Philly special with two quarterbacks in the game. That was the problem with that. Tucker Welch says Kewan Lacy for Heisman. He's amazing. He absolutely is amazing. Hey, and if everybody noticed, if you watched the broadcast, I have comped him multiple times to Darren McFadden, even when he wasn't having big games, and you got to see that on the broadcast this time. There's some similarities to the two players. I was pretty impressed with that and smiled whenever they did that. Florida was so close to that miracle throw, almost had a heart attack. Yeah, it was almost a prayer, Jordan Hare. Do you remember in 2014, the game before the kick six, when they beat Georgia on that play? And you could just see it, and it's like, oh no. After the Hunter heave, it's like, this can't be the way we go out. But luckily, it didn't happen. Stephanie Foley from Newton, what a nail biter. Steph from Newton, thank you for watching. Jeffrey Langley, that's Hoppy Langley's brother, who was a field goal kicker at Ole Miss whenever Ole Miss upset Notre Dame in 77. Kewan Lacy, MVP, Aiken, South Carolina. And Tim Skelton says, McCarley, Mississippi, it was a hard-fought game, but Ole Miss came out on top. That is so awesome. Hey, and also, Ole Miss and Florida's all-time series tied. So whenever they do the better program thing that you're going to hear over the next couple of days, just remember that the all-time series is now 13-13. It's completely tied up. Daniel Mason, 1982 Egg Bowl. I was there my freshman year. Those were tough days. It's still hard to believe it was real. Man, I had a record, by the way, and people that watch this show, they probably don't understand. They haven't heard this, or maybe you might recognize it, but it was like in 1980 or 1981. And it was a record that had songs written about the schedule of the teams that Ole Miss was going to play that year. And I literally wore that record out. And that was pre the time I can remember. I'm sure John Fourcade was playing quarterback at that time. I don't remember John Fourcade playing quarterback. I only remember Ken Austin in 1982. I remember Kelly Powell in 83 and Jamie Holder getting the win up in Tennessee 13-10, beating Arkansas and Jackson, starting a little bit of a winning streak to go to the Independence Bowl for the right to play Air Force for the first time since 1971. I'm telling you, people do not, or they choose not to understand the scar tissue that Ole Miss fans have had to deal with for the better part of 60 years. We all have these stories. Every one of us have these stories. But tonight makes that journey worth it. That's the cool thing about tonight. When you're sitting there in 1988 and they're running 46 trap and Sean Sykes is scoring a touchdown to beat Alabama when the Bear Bryant Museum it was dedicated. But you were going to go 5-6 that season. You beat Alabama, but it wasn't going to be a successful season. This makes that year worth it. And that's pretty cool. We need to enjoy this. Now, coming up in a little under 2 weeks is the Egg Bowl, the battle for the golden egg. That's never an easy task, and there's nothing more dangerous in this world than a 5-win Egg Bowl team. Nothing. But we need to enjoy that. We earned the right to enjoy this. Don't let the lane noise bother you. Don't let anything bother you about that. Enjoy the fact that you got the W tonight because you earned this. And I think that's very important. So happy for this team, ready to see some history made in Oxford. Still playoff bound. Holly Flower says, way to go, Ole Miss. Swamp Puppy, hotty toddy from Tallahassee, Florida. That's a pretty good location for what happened tonight on multiple levels. The Hoot Out Weekly. I cannot emphasize how many times I said we were going to lose just by how the first half went. Thank God they turned it around in the second half. Yeah, it's all of that scar tissue. It is all of that stuff that makes you worry about what is going on and what could happen. That is what makes tonight special. Now, the Florida fans and all of them, they're going to want to try and make this about them. Who cares? Let them. Their season is over. It's done with. I just quoted Miracle, but whatever. But it is over. They don't have anything left. Nothing. They want to get to next year. And I have been saying for 3 weeks that next year is here for Ole Miss. Finally, next year is here for Ole Miss. And that is awesome. That is something that I have fun thinking about. Hunter Booth says, so glad they pulled this one out. It was stressful, right? Matthew Mitchell said, fantastic halftime adjustments by Pete Golding. Held Florida to 0 points in the second half and really for the last 37 minutes of the game. I'm about to drop a stat for you that you probably are not used to a Lane Kiffin team doing, okay? Against Oklahoma, they had the ball for 35 minutes of time of possession. I know, we run tempo the whole 9 yards. But they ran specifically slow to affect the helmet communication of Brent Venables on defense, and they do a great job of kind of scheming you up. And you don't believe me? Look what Oklahoma did to Alabama today. Seriously. Oklahoma's a really good team. Against Florida today, Ole Miss had 37 minutes and 57 seconds of time of possession. They had the ball 2/3 of the game. That's absolutely nuts to think about. Absolutely nuts. But yes, the fantastic halftime adjustments, that's the reason Kewan Lacy was able to go off. They were worn slap out. Worn slap out. Mike Begg says, I wish Georgia Tech could beat Georgia. It would be nice, but they're playing a neutral site game, essentially. They're playing in Mercedes-Benz as opposed to playing on Georgia Tech's campus, which it could get weird. So, yeah. Philip Webb, Ole Miss will not lose to Mississippi State. Hope not. William Bronson says, what a great atmosphere just left the stadium. Yeah, we need to get all of the O-Song and all of that stuff coming up with what's going on. Cursed C6, nope, they can lose to State and still be in now. But if they win against State, they'll host a playoff game. That's right. Beat State, and the biggest game in the history of the state of Mississippi comes to Vaught-Hemingway Stadium on December 19th or 20th. Or a bye. A bye is not outside the realm of possibility. If Texas beats Texas A&M, who's number 3, Ole Miss could end up in that 4 spot and then not play until January 1st. So know that is on the table. Mike Biggs, another question. Can Texas beat A&M? Yeah, I think so. A&M gave up 30 points and a half to South Carolina, and the game's in Austin. So, yeah, I think they can do that. USMC bat. One big thing we got to work on for the playoff, improved run defense. They only gave up 102 yards rushing in this game. They got caught a couple of times trying to do the rush 3 thing, and Florida broke off like a 17-yard run. But whenever they did their normal stuff, they were pretty good. PJ Thornton, we finally broke through. That is absolutely correct. It's amazing. It is amazing. And honestly, the blue blood teams that are all sitting here going, what is Ole Miss so excited about? They beat a 3-6 Florida team. Why are they so happy? I hate that they don't know this feeling a little bit, that they don't understand what we have, what we did, that they've been so blessed of their teams. I hate that they don't get this, because right now I feel really good about what's going on. And I am so ready for the playoffs to start. Go through the Egg Bowl, win that game, 11-1. Let's freaking go. This is so awesome. And we all earned this. That's the reason I'm not talking about the Lane to Florida stuff in this broadcast. You don't get that in this broadcast. We'll talk about that on Monday. Today, we're talking about us as a fan base finally crossing that final hurdle. We're talking about finally winning that game that has been the downfall of Ole Miss for 60 years. We're talking about players stepping up and making play. They didn't play tight in the fourth quarter. I was certain they were going to play tight. I was ready for it. I was ready to write the obituary when it was 24-20 Florida to start the fourth quarter. I was ready. But that's not the way it worked out. Lane Kiffin had this team ready to go. This team was locked in. They weren't distracted by the noise. I will say that. So whatever psyop was out there didn't work. Although I will give them credit. They played really, really hard. They're not very good, but they played really, really hard. Arbiter says, really wanted Ole Miss to score another touchdown on that last drive instead of taking a knee. Yeah, me too, kind of, just because of all the crap that we dealt with over the course of the last week from the Florida Twitter. Zach Thomas, Ole Miss took care of business tonight. Alabama did not. Hotty toddy, what's next? Tim Skelton, Ole Miss left 6-14 on the field. Yep, absolutely. And Hooper Premium, Ole Miss to the playoffs, man. Fantastic. Brett Will says, Sonny P is my hero of the game. And that deflected pass to Whiteout Williams, that was absolutely huge. Bobby Patrick, tonight was a joyous win. Walter, Hoppy Hopper, best win so far. Yeah, it's the same thing. People don't understand what's going on. Daniel Kelly says Lacy is one of the best running backs to ever play at Ole Miss, next to Deuce. Yeah, and I was told, believe it or not, in the spring, you have levels of sourcing, okay? I don't think I'm giving away secrets on that. But you have people that you completely trust. As soon as you hear what is said, you're going to go with it at that point because they are 100% credible. Then you have the second level of people that are mostly correct, but occasionally can put out a flyer, that if you go crazy with that, you'll get called out. Well, I got a message in the spring from one of that second tier sourcing that said Kewan Lacy was the best running back that Ole Miss has ever had. And I was like, okay, okay, appreciate it. And he's going to be good. He is going to be really good, and he's catching his stride at just the right time. The defense is playing better. I'm telling you, Ole Miss has a chance to be really dangerous moving forward. Lawrence Tumlin says, my heart was in my throat most of the game, but way to pull it out. Go Rebs. Jessica P. from 1776, Yorktown, Virginia. This game was phenomenal. Fun fact, me and my wife honeymooned in Williamsburg, Virginia. So, yeah, we did the Colonial Williamsburg thing as 23-year-olds. So that was interesting. I think we saw U571, believe it or not, on our honeymoon. That's what I remember from Williamsburg. I think we went to the theme park that's in Williamsburg as well. Ryan Yawn belt BTA, even with Kiffin's terrible fourth down calls, Gator tastes good. Can we talk about the Simmons package on the goal line? We already did. That was ridiculous. Last year's team wins it all if they had Lacy. Reverend Hugh, I don't know if that's the case. I genuinely don't know that that's the case, because the thing that makes this team so good is not just the running game. It's the variety in the passing game to where you can't just take away something. Ron Roberts shut down this offense last year. This offense had 550 or so yards and 27 first downs and scored 34 points and left points on the table. Yeah, I don't know that they would have won the national championship. I don't know. I think this is the best team that's ever played at Ole Miss, and I have not seen the Johnny Vault late 50s, early 60s teams, so I can't really say that. But definitely in what I've seen in the 70s through the 2020s, this is the best football team that Ole Miss has ever had. PJ Thornton, let's just think about all the times we've been on the opposite side of this feeling. Yes. That's what we talked about. This Ole Miss finally winning this game. It was awesome. It was really fun. So tomorrow, okay, this is what we're going to do. Tomorrow, please watch the reaction roundtable, because I am going to be so smug. So smug. And the big blue bloods, they're going to hate me because I'm smug. Because Ole Miss is 11-1. They should be, or it should be 11-0. They're 10-1, and they're 1 4th and 2 away from 11-0. And I talk like that. And I will. If you watch the reaction roundtable, I talk like that. And we tend to have a lot of fun. So we'll see how that goes as well. Texas left the playoff scene as well. And put this up there from Cliff Dykes, biggest win ever for Ole Miss. Said it multiple weeks. Every game that Ole Miss plays, the next biggest game in Ole Miss's history, in the Egg Bowl. Win that game. That's what it is. That's what's ahead of you. And if you win that game, man, it gets to be real fun at that point. It should be a lot of fun as well. So enjoy this. Fins up, hotty toddy, for everything that's gone on, from what's going on, all of the excuses, all of the poor management. Pete Boone making me count tapes whenever I was video coordinating, because he needed to know how many I had before he would let me know more. And all of that. Taking cameras outside 3 hours early and getting there early, because in Mississippi, in fall practice, they will fog up if you don't do that. All of this stuff. Going to watch Ole Miss and VMI play in like 1995. Seeing the brawls in like 1990 and 1988 and 1986 over the field. Chanting Emory is a memory after Ole Miss beat Mississippi State with Mark Young. Tonight's our night. Tonight, we earn this. And everybody else may laugh at it. And there's like, oh, look at them. You beat a 3-6 team, yada, yada, yada. Screw them. You earn this. Enjoy it. Talk to us on the reaction roundtable tomorrow. Should be a lot of fun as well. So thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we are the front door of Ole Miss. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it's absolutely free. Your support means the world to us. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy breaks down the best conference in all of college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow. Man, it feels pretty good, right? Anyway, take care.